Once hailed as a financial prodigy, Clara Monroe became the youngest self-made millionaire in Silicon Valley at just 19. Her apps were on every phone, her face in every magazine. But now, at 32, she wanders the streets of Los Angeles with a shopping cart, invisible to the world that once worshipped her. What happened to Clara is not just a tale of bad luck, it's a masterclass in betrayal, greed, and the dark side of success. It wasn't the kind of place where dreams were meant to be born. The cracked sidewalks of East Oakland, with their rusted chain-link fences and distant wail of sirens, didn't look like the launching pad for a tech empire. But Clara Monroe was never typical. Even at 10 years old, while her classmates were still struggling with multiplication tables, Clara was dissecting old desktop computers her uncle salvaged from the scrapyard. Her fingers moved across circuit boards like they were extensions of her mind. People said she had a gift. She knew she had a mission. Clara's childhood was built on duality. Her mother, a night shift nurse, worked herself into silence to keep the lights on. Her father had disappeared when Clara was 6, leaving only a debt-ridden legacy and a box of science fiction novels. Those books became her refuge, and in those pages, where underdogs built worlds with their minds, Clara found her calling. By 13, she was writing code that local tech tutors couldn't even understand. She taught herself Python, C++, and JavaScript in the back corner of a public library, sometimes sleeping there until closing. Her first app, coded entirely on a school-loaned Chromebook, helped users track and optimize their daily routines. She uploaded it quietly to the App Store. 2 weeks later, it had 50,000 downloads. It wasn't just talent, it was obsession. Clara didn't attend school dances. She didn't hang out at the mall. Instead, she stayed home debugging lines of code, her laptop glowing like a portal to a better life. Her mother didn't understand it. Not really. But when a check for $92,000 arrived after Clara licensed her app to a wellness startup, she didn't question it either. By 17, Clara had formed her own LLC. Her second app, a gamified finance tracker, was featured on TechCrunch. People started calling her the Code Princess. She wore the title like armor, and though interviews made her nervous, she always spoke with a conviction that made even the most jaded investor pause. She wasn't here to play in someone else's system. She was going to rewrite it. But for all her early accolades, Clara was still just a teenager with a target on her back. For every mentor who genuinely wanted to help her, there were 2 more who saw dollar signs when they looked at her. She began to learn how to spot the difference, sometimes too late. When she got her first $1 million offer to sell everything and come work for a major tech conglomerate, she paused. The world told her to take it, secure the bag. But Clara refused. She wasn't interested in becoming someone else's pawn. She wanted to build something that lasted. That was when MavenLink was born. An app designed to democratize mentorship, MavenLink connected young entrepreneurs with vetted industry veterans. Clara believed in collective success, in leveling the playing field. Investors initially scoffed, but within 3 months of its beta launch, the app had 500,000 active users. Suddenly, everyone was listening, and so was the enemy she never saw coming. Clara Monroe's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Investors, journalists, tech podcasters, everyone wanted a piece of the girl who had built MavenLink from a single laptop, in her mother's kitchen. What began as a humble experiment in social entrepreneurship had transformed into the fastest-growing mentorship platform in the United States. And Clara, now just 19, was no longer simply a coding prodigy. She was a visionary CEO with a valuation north of $30 million. She leased a sleek open-space office in Palo Alto, bathed in sunlight and humming with ambition. Whiteboards filled with ideas. Air thick with the aroma of overpriced espresso. The kind of place where futures were built between sips of cold brew and 30-second brainstorms. It was exactly what Clara had dreamed about while hunched over donated textbooks as a child. But something essential was already beginning to slip through her fingers. Her first major hire was her cousin Lucas, a charismatic former marketing student, with a flair for slogans and the ability to charm a room. Next came her childhood best friend, Aisha, who had no tech experience but was fiercely loyal. Clara believed in lifting people up with her. What was the point of success if you couldn't share it? But as the team expanded, the cracks began to show. Lucas, whose charm masked a penchant for late-night parties and unapproved spending, began to clash with Clara's laser-focused discipline. Aisha, now head of HR, struggled to maintain boundaries between friendship and leadership. Clara told herself the tension was normal, just growing pains. She didn't realize she was building a castle on sand. Mavenlink's numbers were impressive. Within a year, it reached over 3 million users. Clara graced the covers of Wired, Forbes, and Fast Company. She was invited to speak at TEDx events, celebrated as a voice of a new, inclusive future in tech. But behind the scenes, the company was burning cash at an unsustainable rate. Development was rushed, security updates were delayed, and Clara, still learning how to lead, often ignored advice she should have heeded. At board meetings, concerns were raised. Clara's responses were defiant, impassioned. She was not going to be one more cautionary tale of a founder ousted by suits. "This is my vision," she insisted. "We grow on our terms, or we don't grow at all." Investors who believed in her charisma and media appeal stayed. Others quietly began to pull back. Then came the acquisition offers, one after another. Google, Amazon, even Facebook sent emissaries. The numbers they offered were eye-watering. $80 million, $120 million. The highest came in at $147 million. For a 20-year-old from East Oakland, it should have been a fantasy come true. But Clara said no. She refused every offer. Not out of arrogance, but out of conviction. "If I sell now," she told Aisha one night over takeout sushi in her penthouse kitchen, "then I'll always be the girl who built something valuable just to hand it off. I want to build something eternal." But empires built on vision alone rarely survive reality. It started subtly. An intern leaked a minor bug on Reddit. A VC sent an angry email that went public. A former developer posted a vague tweet about internal disarray. The media, once enamored, began to dig deeper. The narrative shifted from Clara the genius to Clara the reckless. And inside her carefully curated circle, someone was already planning to cash out. Without her. The betrayal came not with a shout, but a signature. Clara Monroe sat at the head of the Mavenlink boardroom, the walls of glass around her shimmering with the light of San Francisco's skyline. Outside, everything looked perfect. Inside, the empire was beginning to rot. The first lawsuit hit her inbox at 7:43 a.m. on a Monday. It came from a small but aggressive competitor named Intellivise, accusing Mavenlink of intellectual property theft. Clara laughed at first. They had no case. Mavenlink's architecture was proprietary, built from the ground up. But when the complaint detailed specific lines of code, lines that had never been made public, her stomach turned to ice. Only a handful of people had access to that code, and one of them was Peter Langston, her co-founder, her mentor, and the man she had trusted like a second father. Peter had joined Mavenlink in its early days, a semi-retired venture capitalist who promised to protect Clara from the vultures of Silicon Valley. He had helped her navigate seed rounds, connected her to high-profile names, and played the quiet guardian in every major negotiation. He knew every corner of her system, and he had sold it. Emails later surfaced confirming that Peter had been feeding proprietary data to Intellivise for months in exchange for stock options and a silent position on their advisory board. When Clara confronted him, he didn't deny it. He just looked tired. "You wouldn't listen," he said, voice flat. "You wanted to save the world. I wanted to save the company." The betrayal shattered Clara. It wasn't just about the code. It was about the trust. About the nights they spent drafting roadmaps over cheap wine. The father-daughter dynamic she'd let herself believe in. That illusion was now ashes. The board erupted. Investors panicked. Some demanded Peter be removed immediately. Others saw his actions as a justified correction to Clara's idealism. Public confidence collapsed in a matter of weeks. The press devoured her. Headlines once proclaiming her genius now mocked her fall. Code princess or code pirate? The fall of Silicon Valley's sweetheart. One investor, an old Wall Street wolf named Raymond Hensley, told her coldly in a private meeting, "You can cry, Clara, or you can sell. But either way, you're done." But Clara wouldn't sell. Not yet. Not like this. She fired Peter, hired a crisis PR firm, and worked around the clock to rebuild trust. But the damage had spread deeper than she knew. Lucas, her cousin and head of marketing, had been funneling ad dollars into a shell company, registered in Belize. Aisha was in over her head, and her decisions were now being blamed for HR violations involving mismanaged harassment claims. The company Clara had built with love was now an uncontrollable monster. Her empire had become a battleground of lawsuits, betrayal, and corporate sabotage. She barely slept. Her emails were filled with threats, from lawyers, former employees, even fans who now called her a fraud. Then came the audit. Federal investigators began looking into Maven Link's finances. Clara, for all her brilliance, had never been an accountant. She'd trusted others to handle the money. And now, she was facing allegations of tax fraud and securities violations, charges that carried the risk of prison time. On the surface, she remained composed. But inside, Clara was collapsing. Her confidence eroded. Her anxiety bloomed into full. Chapter 4. The Fall and the Shadows. The penthouse was the first to go. Then the Range Rover. Then the last of the Maven Link equity, liquidated quietly to pay for attorneys who couldn't stop the bleeding. Clara Monroe, once the prodigious queen of tech innovation, now lived in a friend's spare guest room until that, too, fell away. The court cases came in waves. One civil suit from a former developer seeking damages for wrongful termination. Another from an investor claiming misrepresentation of future earnings. And still more, from regulatory agencies, private partners, even international clients. Clara was served papers at cafes, on sidewalks, once even in the lobby of a therapist's office. Her world had become a revolving door of accusations and demands, most of which she didn't fully understand. The financial architecture of Maven Link had been so vast and complex, and she had trusted others to manage it. Now all of it was crashing down, and she stood at the epicenter, powerless. Her mental health declined with frightening speed. Panic attacks turned into full blackouts. Her therapist suggested inpatient treatment. Clara refused. "I can't disappear," she whispered. "If I vanish now, they win." But she was already vanishing. Friends distanced themselves. Family stopped answering calls. Even Aisha, who had once defended Clara with tearful loyalty, returned her house key in silence. The industry moved on. New disruptors, new faces. Maven Link's name faded from headlines, replaced by other scandals, other failures. Clara became a footnote. Without income, Clara tried freelancing under pseudonyms, ghostwriting code, doing UX consultations over encrypted calls. But word got out. Former clients refused to pay. Online forums painted her as radioactive. Employers warned each other, "She's unstable. Don't touch her." When the last of her savings ran out, she pawned her mother's wedding ring, then her laptop, then the silver chain she wore the night she won her first startup pitch. By then, she was living in her car. She parked on residential streets in Glendale, always changing locations, learning the rhythm of neighborhoods, where cops were less likely to knock. At night, She stared at the ceiling and listened to her own breath, wondering when it would finally stop. Depression wrapped itself around her like a fog, thick, suffocating, unrelenting. One morning, her car was towed. She had parked too close, to a fire hydrant. With no ID, no address, and no money to pay the impound fee, Clara walked away from the last object she owned. Just like that, she was on the street. Clara Monroe became a ghost in her own city. She wandered Skid Row with a stolen blanket and a second-hand backpack, her hair matted, her skin sunburned. She spoke little, avoided eye contact, and refused to mention her past. When people asked her name, she said Jane. No one recognized her. Not anymore. She scavenged food from dumpsters behind supermarkets. She read torn books left in donation bins. She scribbled code on scraps of cardboard with broken pencils, not because anyone asked her to, but because she couldn't stop. The machine of her mind, once worth millions, still ran, pointless, relentless. And then the rain came. Los Angeles rain is rare, but when it falls, it floods. Clara's only shelter, a slumped tarp tied between two trash bins, collapsed under the weight of the storm. She sat in the mud for hours, soaked, trembling, staring at her own reflection in a puddle. It was the first time in months she truly saw herself. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply whispered, "This is who I am now." She believed it. Thank you so much for continuing to watch this far. Your presence is what keeps stories like this alive. And believe me, the best is yet to come. Chapter 5. The Woman Beneath the Headliners. She didn't speak for the first 10 minutes of the interview. The journalist Nathan Krieger had nearly given up when Clara Monroe finally looked up from her paper cup of instant coffee and said, "I'm not who they said I was, and I'm not who I used to be either." It had taken Nathan 6 months to find her. He'd heard rumors of a tech girl on Skid Row, someone who muttered programming languages in her sleep and avoided cameras like they burned. He expected a wild-eyed addict or a paranoid husk. What he found was a woman who spoke like silence had become her first language. Still, when she did speak, every word felt measured, razor sharp. Her face was thinner, her body hunched, but her eyes, those same eyes that once stared down billionaires in boardrooms, still carried fire. Nathan recorded the interview on a battered phone, holding it gently between them like a relic. Clara didn't want to be saved. She didn't want to be redeemed. But for the first time in years, she wanted to be understood. She told him everything: the brilliance, the betrayal, the collapse, the weight of being young and female in a world that wanted to both worship and destroy her, the pressure to be perfect, the voices that told her she was a fraud, the moments when she believed them, the night she stood at the edge of the Griffith Observatory, ready to jump, only to be stopped by a child offering her a granola bar and saying, "You look hungry?" That moment saved her. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was human. Clara described the years since, the shelters, the nights on sidewalks, the people she met who had nothing, yet gave freely. "When you lose everything," she said, "you learn the value of what can't be taken." Nathan asked her why she hadn't tried to rebuild. Clara smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Because I did build something, and it broke me. Maybe some people are meant to shape the world from the shadows, not from the spotlight." Her story went viral within 48 hours. Headlines screamed, "Tech prodigy turned homeless heroine." Documentaries were pitched. Startups offered her a second chance. VC firms wanted to sponsor her recovery. Even Peter Langston released a statement of apology, claiming he was moved by her strength. Clara declined them all. She remained in Skid Row, volunteering quietly at a women's shelter, teaching basic coding to anyone who showed interest. No cameras, no interviews, just the sound of keyboards clicking in rhythm with hope. Nathan's article won a Pulitzer. But Clara? She disappeared. Again. Some say she moved to Oregon, changed her name, lives in a small town near the coast. Others swear they've seen her in tech forums under obscure usernames, correcting code with eerie precision. But no one really knows. Her legend, however, has only grown. She became a symbol, not of failure, but of what it costs to dream in a world that eats its dreamers. She showed us that success can be a disguise for suffering, and that sometimes the greatest strength is walking away. So now we ask you, what would you have done in Clara's place? Would you fight to reclaim your empire? Or would you vanish, choosing peace over power? Tell us in the comments. And if this story moved you, subscribe for more true tales that shake the soul. Don't forget to watch the next video. It just might change how you see money, success, and yourself.